This is the Extra Point Podcast from Arizona's family.
All right, 9 picks are in the books for the Arizona Cardinals. The 2023 NFL Draft is in the books. Let's get some experts' opinion on how they did and maybe get a 2026 prediction. Let's go out to the Zoom here. Brack and Johnny Venerable from PHNX, who are joining Arizona's family soon. Zoom in here to talk to us on the Extra Point Podcast. But first of all, guys, welcome to the family.
Thank you so much, Mark. We're super excited to consume you guys and your programming on a consistent basis, a staple of the Valley. And now PHNX Sports gets to join forces, and we couldn't be more excited. And really ahead of a pivotal 2023 season, starting anew, perfect time for us to join forces.
Yeah, hopefully get all the negative headlines in the rearview mirror. And now when our partnership begins, we can talk all the good stuff regarding this football team.
All right, so how this is going to work, KPHE, if you haven't heard, is Channel 13 on cable, Channel 44 over the air. We're going to carry Suns games. We're going to carry the high school football, basketball championships, and hopefully a lot more sports. And our good friends over at PHNX, you guys will be on talking sports, talking Cardinals. And just real quick to kind of give people an idea of what you've been up to, who are just kind of consuming your product for the first couple times here. What do they get each day when they log on to PHNX and get some Cardinals information here?
Yeah, it's the only daily Arizona Cardinal podcast and a premier podcast in the sense that we don't pull any punches. We're very much pro team. We love the team. We follow the team, but we're objective. We're objective about where this team has been, where this team is going. We get guests on. We've got personalities on from Damian Anderson, Frank Sanders. But again, it's cut and dry Arizona Cardinal football talk every single day.
Yeah, and it marries the fan experience with kind of the journalist experience, right? I'm out there at practice every day with you, Mark. We're at the press conferences. We're getting the insights. Johnny's one of the best Cardinals insiders you can find, and we're getting covering this team in every aspect, and we love doing it.
All right, so let's talk about it. Let's get into it here. I don't know if we go draft grades or we get a prediction for the 2026 season. Bo, let's start with you. What are you burning on? Do you feel like this weekend was a successful one?
I thought it was a monumental success for Monty Ossenfort, who pretty much this entire offseason had to make the unpopular moves that go into a rebuild, cleaning up the mess of the previous regime and Steve Keim. And that's not fun. It's not for the faint of heart. So for him to kind of show up round one of the NFL draft and just start wheeling and dealing, get a massive haul for the 3rd overall pick, slide down to 12, then move back up to 6, get their guy in Paris Johnson Jr., who we found out more about, and tremendous kid, great athlete, and he projects as being a starting left tackle, right tackle, wherever it may be on that offensive line in the future. That's a premium position. That was a home run for Monty Ossenfort right out of the gates.
Yeah, to take advantage of a Houston team that traded up for a non-quarterback and Will Anderson Jr. And listen, we love Will Anderson Jr., but we had been tipped off on our show while we were at the NFL Combine in February. Cardinals weren't infatuated with Will Anderson Jr. They liked him. They could have very well picked him. But, we have it sourced pretty well. The Cardinals probably would have made Paris Johnson Jr. the 3rd overall pick. So when you consider those factors, Mark, to get a franchise caliber left tackle from a blue blood program like Ohio State that's going to protect Kyler Murray for hopefully, the next 3 to 5 years, if not longer. On top of that, getting a 1st and a 3rd from a team that, like yourself, is amongst the worst in the NFL statistically and projections into the 2024 and 2023 season. I mean, you could be sitting pretty in the 2024 draft. I know it's hard to project into the future, 365 days, but man, that draft next year, it is loaded with blue chippers.
Is anybody ever going to do business with Monty Ossenfort again when it comes to a trade and they see the haul that he got headed into next year after this year's draft?
You look like Liam Neeson from Taken. He's got a specific set of skills, right? And it's wheeling and dealing. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they should kind of buyer beware what's going on with Monty Ossenfort, because he put the league on notice, no doubt about it. Not only in the first round, the second round, he pulled off a deal for pick 33, moved down, and still got another premium position, B.J. Ojulari, the pass rusher at LSU, an SEC guy who is going to immediately make an impact on this Cardinals defense, which was missing that pass rusher. And Jonathan Gannon, coming from a defense that had 70 sacks, to get a guy that could potentially rack him up here from now until a couple years down the road, that was a big move already for Monty Ossenfort, again in day 2, just getting things started there.
Yeah, and just to instill that reputation if you're Austin Ford, not only with rival GMs and scouts and whomever, front office people, but internally, when you're trying to negotiate with guys like Budda Baker or DeAndre Hopkins, like, guys, I'm not just going to give you away. I'm not here to give out free money and free contracts. It's the biggest indictment of Steve Keim last fall. He was paying guys that were openly holding out of training camp, and they're just handing out deals left and right to G.J. Humphries and Marcus Golden. And so the shrewdness of Austin Ford to take advantage of Houston and maybe to a lesser extent Tennessee, and then turn around and tell everybody, yeah, we're keeping DeAndre Hopkins. He's on the team. Hey, Budda Baker, you have 2 years left on your contract. We love you. We want you here, but we're not handing out new money just because it's a new ownership or a new GM group, I should say. So I think being able to instill that clear-cut, definitive guideline of this is how I do business, and you guys may not like it, but it's for the benefit of our club in the long term.
So DeAndre Hopkins goes on Instagram today, releases a video, and I think he said, "Who said I was going to leave?" Is his tongue firmly planted in his cheek there, or is this more negotiating, or is Hop a Cardinal, and we could maybe watch a Larry Fitzgerald ascent here to Canton, Ohio?
I mean, it's a great question. I don't know if this is just part of the negotiation. Is DeAndre Hopkins, does he realize that he has to hold up his end of the bargain in order for the Arizona Cardinals to get a good deal? Or does he realize, hey, I like what's going on here? It's tough to decipher through. Johnny, can you speculate any more than I can? I wish I could. I mean, it's good to hear from DeAndre Hopkins, him saying all the right things that he wants to be here. I'm still a little skeptical that he's wearing an Arizona Cardinals uniform the entirety of the 2023 campaign.
All right, so you put your tinfoil hat on, and here's what I would say is they do not want to pay him his money into 2024. If his contract was simply all guaranteed for 2023, this would be easy. But the sooner they release him or trade him, the sooner they can get some of that money on the books for 2023, and it's not pushed to 2024. And stay with me with my next point, something my co-host and I have talked about off air, but it's something to keep in mind. If they were to, hypothetically, move off of Kyler Murray in 2024, let's say they have marked the first overall pick and they draft Caleb Williams, you could trade Kyler Murray and it would cost you about $46 million in dead cap. It's doable, right? Do you then want to have $18 million in dead cap on top of it from cutting or trading DeAndre Hopkins next year? Or would you rather be proactive now and make a move? And I don't think they'll cut him because the optics are too bad from that. And they had opportunities to trade him for pennies on the dollar and they didn't. I think what they're hoping for is training camp, an injury, God forbid, move him somewhere else. The trading deadline that we saw once upon a time with Odell Beckham Jr. and Von Miller, send him somewhere else, get another premium pick for 2024's draft. That's, I think, the perfect scenario. What's not ideal, though, is if you go into next season, he gets hurt again, the team's not playing well, it's an immovable contract. Like, what do you do? Because they have moved all of this money out of the way with an eye on 2024. I mean, you look at Ertz and James Conner and D.J. Humphries, all these staples, none of their money is guaranteed, Harley, for 2024. It's Kyler and D-Hop, and that's about it.
So Budda Baker, DeAndre Hopkins, who is on the team come Thanksgiving?
It's a great question, especially
there's no right answer here, by the way.
No, there's not. I think Budda Baker is a good bet there. You know, Budda Baker, 2 more years on his contract. Now they'll have a club option coming up at the end of next season. Will they want to exercise that and make him a Cardinal for the second of the 2 years that they control him? Do they want to iron out an extension at some point next season? I don't know about that, but I think as far as between those two players, those two star players, DeAndre Hopkins, Budda Baker, I think the better bet is Budda Baker's wearing a Cardinals uniform longer.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now, his money is deferred to the team in 2024, so they can choose to move off of him or not. It's a team option, but I'm with Bo. I think he just still represents everything that you want this team to be. He's significantly younger than DeAndre Hopkins. Jonathan Gannon has an affinity for safeties, being an ex-safety. I think we get through 2023, and he is basically the lone stalwart, along with Kyler Murray, assuming you don't have the number 1 overall pick. Those are the 2 veterans to carry the baton. Hopkins over 30. Humphries has a bad back. Ertz, Connor, they're expensive. So those are the 2 franchise icons, I think, that survived 2023.
No, it's certainly interesting, and the popular opinion around here is the Cardinals are going to be bad next season. And Gannon will not say it's a rebuilding season, and I get it. You don't concede defeat at all. But if you had to make a prognostication right now, what is the record? And what would you like it to be in order to, go down the tinfoil hat road and maybe get a Caleb Williams?
Man, that's a tough question to answer, because you could say another 4-13 team season, and then you realize how bad and how frustrating it is to watch week in and week out a team go down that road. It's easier said than done. I mean, that's a lot of losing. You want to see this team take on kind of how their head coach conducts himself, how that coaching staff conducts themselves, that competitive fire, and if they have any ounce of talent that could translate to some wins that people don't see on their schedule. But taking on the AFC North, you've got Joe Burrow and the Bengals. You're taking on the NFC East. You've got the NFC champion Eagles in there, Jonathan Gannon's former team. You do have a fourth place schedule, but albeit still a tough one. I think this Arizona Cardinals on the high end could probably win 6 games, but for the most part, I think you're looking from anywhere from like 4 to 6.
I think it just really depends on when Kyler Murray is cleared to play. Is he cleared to play and comes back in September, early October? Then I would say game on. They're not going to throw games, and they're especially not going to throw games with Kyler Murray playing. He's going to want to prove people wrong. I think Drew Petzing's quarterback offense is very QB friendly. But if Kyler Murray is nowhere to be found through October, at what point do you just say, we're just going to punt this season? We're going to throw the rookie out there. We're going to stick with David Blau or Jeff Driscoll or somebody like that, because what is the benefit of exposing Kyler Murray in a lost season? They have a plan in place. They're not sharing it with anybody. We know their offense is going to be a mix of San Francisco and Cleveland. It's going to be run heavy. So I do think it's going to benefit Kyler when he does come back. And Mark, I'll be honest with you, I think he's ahead of schedule. I think he's moving around and is motivated to prove people wrong. And, we spoke with Jonathan Gannon at the Combine, and they're going to use kid gloves. They're going to be ultra conservative, cautious with him. But you got to believe, okay, Hopkins is sticking around, and they haven't signed a quarterback of note. What happens if number one's running around out there in late July, early August? Is it game on? Is it, for the prognosticators out there, is it a team that could sneak up on people? I think they do have enough top-end talent to keep certain Sundays interesting, but I'm with Bo. I would say 7 wins max, and then if the wheels fall off and Kyler's not around for the majority of the season, you're in the 3 to 4 win category firmly.
Okay, I need the former because the Suns are depressing me, and I've already conceded the series after one game. That's for another podcast and some of your colleagues over there, and I hope Espo's doing well. All right, so Paris Johnson Jr., were we penciling him in to start? As far as Ojulari goes, Garrett Williams, Michael Wilson, John Gaines, Clayton Tune. I still can't say the linebacker's name from
Papo.
I don't. There's no confidence in saying it. What other rookies do you think are going to make the biggest impact here?
It's interesting. I mean, we'll see what happens with Michael Wilson, the wide receiver out of Stanford. He had a couple breaks. It wasn't a ligament issue where he had a couple injuries in college. He was the biggest head scratcher. You mentioned the first 3 at premium positions, and you had the surprise wide receiver. He's got the size, adds a little diversity to that wide receiver room. So now you've got Zach Pascal, DeAndre Hopkins, and Wilson all over 6 feet. And that kind of looks a little bit more what Drew Petzing was dealing with in Cleveland. So a little bit more size. So can he make an impact? But, I like Papo. I do. He was an absolute freak at the Combine. There's not obviously undersized. His Twitter handle is @thefreak. I don't know how he got that, but 4.3940 at his position. I know he's a little bit light, but undersized, decent build, and he can make an impact maybe immediately on special teams and go that Budda Baker route to success. Elite teams player, and then maybe it translates to playing on defense in a couple seasons.
Yeah, I'm with Bo. I like Papo a lot. I think he fits the mold of a Kaiser White and TJ Edwards that Jonathan Gannon had in Philadelphia. And listen, I know they're not Yeah, they're not thrilled with Isaiah Simmons right now. And we're minutes away, hours away from them deciding probably not to pick up Isaiah Simmons' fifth-year option. They're playing Zaven Collins to start OTAs and minicamp at outside linebacker pass rusher. So there are jobs to be had at that linebacking core. This is a kid who started in the SEC at 18 years old, has been in that program for 4 years. He's got experience. I also like the combination of Paris Johnson Jr. and Jonathan Gaines. I think Jonathan Gaines out of UCLA by default is going to win the war of attrition on some of these offensive linemen for the Cardinals that tend to get hurt. I mean, DJ Humphries is still not healthy, right? So if he's not even available, it's like Paris Johnson Jr. takes that job and never gives it back. And then you look at, okay, well, then they don't have a left guard, and Will Hernandez got hurt last year, and Jonathan Gaines can also maybe play center. It would not surprise me if we looked up in the product out of UCLA, who was originally committed to Princeton, went to UCLA, played a ton of games for the Bruins. That's what I love about this draft class, Mark, is all these rookies, they come from programs where they were staples, right? These aren't, 10 to 12 tweeners. They didn't have a ton of experience. They're raw. No, these guys are by and large ready to play in the NFL. And I think Gaines in particular, if we're like around Thanksgiving and he's played a handful of games and he's just got one of the jobs locked down, we should not be surprised, because I think this interior offensive lineman class from this draft was loaded. And this kid's, I think, got a big upside, especially when you look at his athleticism.
Chances Clayton Tune ends up on the field next year. First of all, it's a great story with his grandfather being the first ever draft pick. But if Kyler is not 100% ready to go, then you're looking at 4-13, and you're like, okay, give the youngster a chance. So, are you in favor of name that tune?
Absolutely, no doubt about it. I mean, if the season goes as south as we've described, right? I mean, what's the point of seeing more Jeff Driscoll snaps, David Blau, Colt McCoy? Pray for his health in those scenarios. So a guy like Clayton Tune, highly productive at Houston, over 100 touchdown passes, sneaky athletic. He was the second most athletic quarterback in this class. So he can do everything that Drew Petzing wants to do at the quarterback position. Why not just kind of throw him to the fire a little bit and just see what you have? And if you have it found in the fifth round, a nice serviceable backup to Kyler Murray at a cheap price for the next 4 years, I think that's a win for Monty Ossenfort and crew.
Yeah, I think 100% he plays snaps this year. First of all, Colt McCoy is not healthy yet. He's calling spring, college football or semi-pro. I can't remember what he's doing.
Right? Yeah.
USFL.
Yeah.
He's doing color. And and we've heard, Mark, that he's basically almost got 1 foot out the door. They were kind of lukewarm on, talking about all of his injuries last year, disclosing them. He got beat up.
Yeah.
And he's made a lot of money, and he's had a nice NFL career. Is this his last season, or is he even going to play? And then you look at Jeff Driscoll and David Blau, who do not inspire a ton of confidence. I know they signed both those guys off of last year's tape, but this is your rookie. This is somebody that you're going to have your imprint on, that you can mold from scratch, that hasn't been tainted by other franchises like Detroit and company. So I think he at least has a start under his belt, especially when you consider when the Cardinals get into December next year. And if the team's going nowhere and Kyler's not looking good, they're just going to say, we're going to throw this kid out there and see what he looks like, see what we have. We like him. They're going to say all the right things. He works incredibly hard. They'll give him opportunities. And, as Bo mentioned on our show, this fan base has gotten excited about much, much less at the backup quarterback position over the course of the preseason. So I would not be surprised to see the ex-Houston Cougar light it up come August in the preseason.
Well, and, just being over at the workout last week on Thursday, I think it was, Colt is much bigger. He is preparing to take the shots, and he knows he might be playing behind a subpar offensive line, so he's going to really have to do that. The offensive line, the defensive line, really, especially that defensive line, that really worries me. Not if we're talking about rebuilding here, but what do they do with the teeth of that defense and to protect a quarterback? I feel like it's slim pickings right now.
Yeah, it certainly is. They took Stills out of West Virginia at the end of that draft. I mean, undersized defensive lineman, but very productive. He was a tackle for a loss machine at West Virginia. And then they went and spent kind of, relative to undrafted rookie free agents, premium dollars, $200,000 reported signing bonus for Jacob Slade out of Michigan State. So they're just throwing players at that position. Carlos Watkins is probably somebody that comes over from Dallas on kind of undervalued free agent deal. And then you're looking at a couple draft picks from the Keim era in the 4th round a couple years ago, and Lecky Fotu and Rashard Lawrence. But outside of that, Jonathan Ledbetter, it's just a bunch of names, and then just seeing who can stick and who could potentially produce at maybe a replacement level would be decent play for the Cardinals at that position.
Yeah, Mark, I'll be frank with you. Bo knows where I'm going with this. I think it's one of the worst position units in the entire NFL. I think their group, not their edge rushers, but their group of defensive tackle would make some folks in the XFL blush. I mean, it is not a great unit. It was ignored for far too long. Keim had been chasing that white whale at 3 technique and 5 technique during the latter years of his career as the Cards GM, and just continually missed, from Darius Philon in free agency to Robert Kimdichie. Rashard Lawrence and Lecky Fotu are probably more served to be backups at this point. So I think, to answer your question, it's like that unit is piecemealed, patchwork together until the 2024 offseason, where I think they'll have to spend money for once up front on the defensive line. And then, I mean, if you're talking about 2 top 12 draft picks, which they're projected to have, it's a much more robust defensive line class next year, especially from a 3 or 5 technique. The Jalen Carter situation really threw a wrench, because had that not happened, first of all, it's a tragic scenario, right? But the Cardinals would have strongly considered taking him 3rd overall. It's their biggest position of need. But because of all of the off-the-field concerns and the fact that he came to Georgia's pro day out of shape, you could not make him, given the Cardinals, I want to say inconsistencies, but dysfunction off the field, their own dysfunction. You couldn't add Jalen Carter to that. So I think looking ahead to next offseason, it is priority 1, 2, and 3.
Well, and we talk about the dysfunction off the field, and the Eagles are a team that can absorb a guy like this and throw their arms around him, and you just see how they're built, and they end up with half the Georgia defense. And I mean, how many years are we away from assuming that there's no more of these just, soap operas off the field? It seems like we are light years away from a team being built that way. It's good that we have Jonathan Gannon here, a guy that was part of that and brings some of that DNA over. But I mean, if you had to handicap it right now, how far apart are the Philadelphia Eagles and the Arizona Cardinals?
Man, I mean, talk about the incident board, not even getting past 1 day without incident. You had to script, kind of like erase that off the dry erase board, because they had the incident right before the draft went off with tampering, even involving Gannon and Monty Ossenfort. So you can't say that they're not going to get in trouble. But as far as narrowing the gap between where Philly is, like a well-oiled machine, and they just can't help themselves from drafting Georgia Bulldogs or trading for them, it's a large gap. But, they did the right thing in accumulating draft assets for the 2024 draft and adding players at premium position to where it could have kickstarted things and expedited this rebuild, to where instead of looking 3 to 4, you're looking at 2 to 3, where you can be right back in the thick of things in the NFC West, especially if you can get your quarterback back up to speed as well, with good coaching from Drew Petzing and of course at the top of Jonathan Gannon.
Yeah, Monty Ossenfort is doing the opposite approach to Steve Keim. Steve was very famous and infamous trying to do quick fixes every offseason. We're going to contend. We're going to be back. Never sustainable. All their periods of success were flash in the pans, whereas Ossenfort is attempting to remake this house from scratch. And I do think he's expediting it, Mark, with the slew of draft picks. That is the easiest way. Everybody has shown you, from Seattle and Cleveland's renovation, like, you get picks, you're back in action if you can nail 60% of the picks, roughly. And I think he's off to a great start with this draft. They're going to own the draft next year. They're going to have opportunities to maybe trade down again. So bullish on what they've done. And I don't think it's out of the question by 2024 they're rocking and rolling. I really don't.
The Extra Point Podcast is a production of 3TV, CBS5, and azfamily.com in Phoenix, Arizona.